Hey, it's Dr. Karen. Welcome to this week's episode of Healthy Habits, Healthy Life, episode 40. And today I'm going to be talking about the ancient Chinese technique called Gua Sha. Now, there are other very similar techniques from other cultures. I am trained in acupuncture and Gua Sha and cupping. And so I'm going to be sharing what I learned through Chinese medicine and acupuncture theory related to Gua Sha. So, what is Gua Sha? Well, it's a way of stimulating the body and the energy system to clear blockages, to increase circulation, and to increase the flow of qi or vital force in the body. And it uses a tool that you literally looks like you're scraping on the surface of the skin. And it can be quite alarming sometimes, the redness that comes out of it, but it is not harmful and it's certainly extremely helpful. And in the past, I remember when I was in medical school, we were warned that sometimes certain cultures do something similar or similar technique to gua sha. And because it looked so awful, the redness on the skin, people thought maybe, or doctors thought maybe, the child was being abused, and realized later on that no, it was a healing practice that the parents were doing. It was an ancient healing practice passed down for generations, and there's various different cultures that do it. And so we realized, oh no, they're not trying to abuse their child. They're trying to actually protect the child and actually make the child feel better. Now, I'm going to show you some slides today as well as to like kind of some of the areas that you may want to focus on when you do gua sha. The cool thing is you can do gua sha on pretty much most areas of the body, anywhere you have pain or dysfunction. You would just want to avoid areas that you have, like, for example, open wounds or like a broken bone, or, something obvious like that, right? So, what are the tools that we use for gua sha for this scraping technique? And by the way, in Cantonese, gua sa literally means scrape sand. And that's how sometimes it can feel when you have a lot of stuck energy in the body. And we used to do this for my patients in the acupuncture practice, especially when they were coming down with a cold, or they had some really stuck old pain, and sometimes even new areas of muscle pain. So the traditional tool that we would use in the acupuncture office is this. It is a Chinese ceramic spoon. Yes, and it was very handy because the edges are very soft, and they're rounded. In other words, it's soft, rounded, and it's not sharp. And you can hold it really, really well, and you can put your thumb on the back of it like this and literally scrape. So if I'm doing my arm, literally like scrape back and forth like this. Now, before you go run and get a Chinese spoon, you need to know that you need some sort of lubricant before you do any sort of scraping. So in Chinese medicine, we have all these different kinds of oils and liniments. Now, you don't have to get that fancy. You can literally use any oil that you have in the home that is a fresh oil. Like, don't use like bacon grease or something. Never mind. Um, so if you want to use, say, sesame oil, you can do that. Coconut oil is really, really great. I have a CBD balm that I use from Elmore Mountain Therapeutics. That's really easy just to put on without my hands all getting gooey. That's a really, really great one that you can use just so it's slippery. Now, if you have cold symptoms or early cold symptoms, you feel shivery, that kind of thing, it can be helpful to use something warming like a warmed oil, like a warmed sesame oil. And there's some Chinese medicine oils that are considered warming. I'm not going to get into that, but for example, there's a tiger balm that's cooling and one that's warming. Anyway, so you get the picture. So if you're feeling hot and feverish, use the cooling one. If you're, feeling kind of cold and shivery, use the warming one. If you don't know, just use any oil you have. Yes. I've also even used magnesium oil. Now, magnesium oil is interesting in that it actually isn't an oil. It is actually magnesium chloride in water, but it has a slippery kind of feel. Now, it's not as nice to do gua sha with that because it tends to kind of dry very, very quickly, but that is potentially another option as well. So this Chinese spoon is about $1, $1.50 in Canada and $1 in the US. However, it can be a little bit difficult to find just one spoon, like if you have a Chinese grocery store near you, it's pretty easy, right? You just buy one spoon. Um, or if you want to have Chinese juk or soup or whatever, you can buy more than one spoon. But this is traditionally what we use. Now, you can use other tools as well. Sometimes this tool is less than optimal for the face. It's almost a little bit big and in a way to hold. So there are other tools as well. The one that I bought, and I literally got this on Amazon, muscle tested it. Um, there are different styles of this. This is the one that I have. It's from a Chinese company called Stick On. Most of these are made in China. And this one, I just happened to see a lot of good reviews. And so I bought it and it's perfectly fine. There are a lot of other steel ones that you can get that are similar shape that are just fine to use and they're relatively inexpensive. I do find this one has an edge here that's pretty thin, so I can tolerate that degree of thinness because it scrapes harder. And I actually use this really, I love this for the neck and over the areas of the bone. Now you're like, wow, why do you scrape bone? Well, you scrape it carefully because a lot of times the fascia gets stuck on the edge of the bone. And so that's where you'll actually get the redness coming up is over the edge of the bone. So I like that this has a little handle. I actually use it on the neck. I'll show you in a moment, up and down like this. You can actually use it just to like move the lymph as well on the face like this. Now, of course, this is not necessarily gua sha. You can do this with a rose quartz one as well. But I use this quite a bit if I feel like I'm coming down with something, some illness, or what we call in Chinese medicine cold invasion. So, say the other day, I was in a rink for hours at a time. And while I was skating, I was fine. But when I was watching a 2-hour show sitting in the stands, I didn't have enough clothes. And so I started, feeling cold and shivery. So I came home and felt like, something's penetrated, that cold has penetrated me. And I felt really cold. So it's really, really great to have something like this handy that you can literally do gua sha over some of these acupuncture points that kind of kick out some of that cold invasion, which then could make you feel like you have what we would traditionally call a cold. Now, when you scrape back and forth, there's no particular, way of doing it that is right or wrong. Most teachers will just say go back and forth. Going around in circles doesn't really work. So go back and forth, back and forth. I have some people who are like, oh, I'm just going to do one direction in the direction of the lymph. You can if you want. I just find it traditionally we just go back and forth. So the color that you see is like this kind of color that would come up. And if it is a fairly recent thing where you have what we call chi or blood stagnation due to wind invasion or heat invasion or whatever it is in Chinese medicine we call it, oftentimes the redness that comes up is relatively bright, and that means you have really good circulation. So if it's not so bright, then, or if it's like deep purple, it means that that blood has been and energy has been stagnated there for a really long time. So bright red is actually a good sign of something more recent, which is often what I get if I start feeling cold symptoms. Or if I have a stiff neck, which is another sign of, wind cold invasion. And then I will literally take something like this and I will just scrape up and down the back of my neck, up and down in the front. This is probably good for double chins too, right? You know, up and down like this with the oil, up and down. I use the other hand. And this way, I actually feel like this edge works really well for me, but it can be painful for some people who aren't used to it. So you can definitely use, the Chinese spoon. You can definitely get on the neck fairly well. You can literally do upside down on the neck like this, like this, like this, here, and then over the shoulder, up and down over this bump, trapezius, you know, things like that. So it's really great. Now I often will do this area as well because I tend to get tight here after doing a bunch of push-ups and things like that. Um, I'll do this area as well, all around here, and then it looked like somebody beat me up, but for me, because the chi is flowing relatively quickly after the gua sha, then it fades by 50% by the next day, and then almost completely disappears by day 3 or 4. For some people who've never done gua sha or who have very stagnant energies, it can last up to 7 days. So be careful if you have like a formal to go to and you have like a low cut, dress in your back or something, and then you've got gua sha, it just looks like somebody whipped you. You know what I mean? So just keep that in mind and give it a good 7 days if this is the first time. The other thing you can do is use something like this, which is breakable. Okay, this is rose quartz. Now, this has a more rounded edge. It's more similar to the spoon, except maybe the edge is even higher. So I find that I don't get really good shot with this, but it is really safe to do on the face, and to do scraping on the face. You're still getting increased, circulation. I usually like the cold stone as a finisher. So I've done whatever massage, fascia blasting, gua sha, and then I'll just go ahead and just scrape it down. So I'll scrape the lymph down. So it goes down this way. Yeah. So how often do you need to do gua sha? Well, you don't need to do it per se. I'll do it if I have a stiffness or I have a pain, something like that. I feel like I'm coming down with something like cold symptoms. Definitely is great because I find it just kicks it right out, those symptoms right out. So I'm going to show you a couple of points, acupuncture points that you can use now in case you feel, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to do this next point because it's on the back of me. Yes, you will need some help. So I'm going to show you a point here. Bladder 12 is called the wind gate point. Now, when you start to feel sick symptoms that you're coming down with the flu or cold, something like that, if you poke around back there, sometimes you'll feel a sore spot, and then that is a really good spot to gua sha over. And if you can't reach it with gua sha, because you're ideally going to be, going up and down on either side of the spine fairly vigorously. Now, remember the oil, right? Don't try to do it without the oil. Up and down. Okay, and you will get some red marks there, and that's appropriate. And then just do wherever else feels good. Like I really love doing the scapula and the trapezius and the neck. But anyway, these points over bladder 12 are what you want to do if you want to kick out the cold. Now, I've also put bladder 12 in these dots, a white and the tan. The reason I have this is because my friends in LifeWave understand that phototherapy patches can be used over acupuncture points to help activate those acupuncture points. In this case, bladder 12, this is relatively easy to actually put on yourself, especially if it's sore, So you take the sticker backings off and you just kind of plop it back there. You don't have to be super, I find that it's not that hard to get to personally, but it could also be that I'm relatively flexible. So that's a really, really great spot. If you don't have that flexibility to put it back there yourself, you can actually use a different point, which I'll show you in a moment. Now, the reason there's a white circle and a tan circle is because here I'm demonstrating how to use the energy enhancer patches or the ice wave patches. They come in a white and a tan, and these work through phototherapy. So nothing goes into the body. If you're taking medication, there's no interaction. They literally are activating those acupuncture points. And even if you don't get it perfectly on the point, don't worry. It has about this big around focus of action. So if your intention is, hey, I'm patching bladder 12, put it back here, that is good enough. And sometimes you will not have to do gua sha at all if you have the patches. And you can just stick it on there for 12 hours just to put the energy into that wind gate point to just kick out the wind cold that can cause cold symptoms. Now, if you do have someone that do gua sha for you, like I do, lucky me, then you can actually do it. Now, I love to do it in front of the fire because it's super awesome if I have a fire going. So it feels warm, but you don't have to. So it'll feel a little warm after you get started. So your partner can go ahead and put some oil on either side of the spine here. I like it all the way up to the neck, and I'll show you why in a moment. And just scrape up and down, up and down, up and down. And then if there's any areas that start to get red, it'll look like a bruise, but it's not a bruise. Okay, it's sha. It's not a bruise. Then you kind of go a little bit more on that side. So you're kind of looking for the stagnation as well. And as far as, can gua sha help with other types of pains, periods, and cramps? Absolutely, it can. I have not used it that much for that personally, but I do know that I've had some pelvic fascial like dysfunction and tightness. So I find it feels really good to gua sha over painful areas, even if it doesn't have sha or redness coming up. So anywhere where you think there's pain, there's stagnant energy, you just know it. It's diagnostic, right? Pain equals stagnant energy. So gua sha can be really helpful. And even if the pain is coming from internally, it's amazing how the external communicates with the internal. So it's very safe to do gua sha. Like certain areas where it's really like difficult, if not impossible to do, would probably be like on the sides of your toes, would be a little tricky. You need a tiny, tiny tool, or maybe in the genitals. I would just avoid that. Nipples, don't do that. That's going to hurt, right? So, and most other parts are fine. Hair is on the head is it's a little bit difficult because you have hair there and you can't really have that contact. It's not wrong, but I usually use the fascia blaster, the mini fascia blaster in my other video I showed you, to do the head to stimulate those points. So I'm going to actually show you some pictures that of what it looks like when you have gua sha and you get the marks. So here is your typical marks that you see. It's fairly bright red. This is perfect. This is right over bladder 12 and actually over gallbladder 20, which I'll show you in a cartoon presentation in a little bit. So this is typical what you would get if you're coming down with a cold, you feel stiff neck, right? You don't know whether you're coming down with a cold or flu or something like that. Great thing to do is to gua sha back here. You'll often get this redness, which is completely normal and completely fine. So this is relatively, what you would see in a cold type situation when you gua sha the back. Now, this next picture is one of somebody getting gua sha for the neck. So in this region right here, gallbladder 20 is the other wind point. It kicks out excess wind and cold, and that is called the wind pond point. Gallbladder 20. So you got wind gate down here and wind pond up there. You don't have to remember those names, but just know they're wind points. So right at the back of your neck. And then now the next photo, there's a lot more red. So don't freak out. Okay. But this is often what we would see in someone who has sometimes acute things going on. Now, this is relatively bright. It's a little purple, but it's relatively bright. So this is a great release. I got to tell you, it looks horrible, but it feels amazing afterwards. When you're going over the points that are stuck, it will feel like a burn. As long as you have enough oil there and it still feels like a burn, it's fine. You don't have to force it to go, oh my God, it's so painful. No, just whatever you can tolerate is just fine. You're still doing lots of great work. But this is an example of stagnant energy that's been released through the gua sha. So you can get something like this. And believe it or not, it goes away in 7 days. Now, some people will use arnica cream afterwards. You can if you want. I don't notice that it's that much faster going away, but you can. If you have LifeWave patches, you definitely could patch the most tender areas. If you have, pain, if you're doing this for pain, for example, you could use ice wave patches for the pain just to get the energy and blood to move even more efficiently. Now, this person, I don't know when he had the gua sha, but this looks kind of old. So sometimes a couple, like a day later, 2 days, 3 days, it'll start to look purple and dark. And that's not unusual. It's really the color when you're doing it that you're kind of assessing whether it's more recent, not as stagnant, or really stagnant. Now, if we just did gua sha on this person, and it looked purple, that means that stagnation has been there for quite some time. And this person probably needs more gua sha in the future or ice wave patches, to just get rid of all that stuck energy in the fascial layers. So let's go ahead and I'll share this again. Now, here is the wind pond points, which is on the back of your neck. So it's right behind the attachment of the sternocleidomastoid muscle, and it's in kind of a depression. And this is where a lot of people naturally put their thumbs in there when they have a headache in the back. They'll often poke their thumbs in there intuitively. And so that's the point that you can gua sha over. I know there's some hair there. It's fine. Just try to get as much as you can there. You can gua sha there. Or if you have LifeWave patches, you can go ahead and put a set of Ice Wave or Energy Enhancer patches on that point. It's really great if you've got wind that came to the back of your neck and you feel a stiff neck, put it on right away. Put those patches on right away, do gua sha right away, right? I've got patches in my purse so that if that happens, like if I'm at a hotel or restaurant and I get a blast of wind in the back and I start to feel that stiff neck, I'll go ahead and put a set. And some of it might be touching hair, and that's fine. As long as most of it's sticking, we're good to go. So these are the points that you could gua sha or put patches. Now, I say you can use Ice Wave or Energy because both come in a white and a tan. If you have other patches, you can be more flexible. For example, you can put an X39 on the left and the X49 on the right if you don't have energy enhancers or the Ice Wave. But the energy enhancers and Ice Wave are really easy to do because it's just white on right, tan on left, and they come in a set of two. So every time you use them, it's a set of two. So that's why I have a picture here, white on the right and tan on the left. Now I know it looks super intense with that redness, but I got to tell you, it works like a charm, and it's wonderful for, chronic pain as well to really release the energy there. I'll do another video in the future on cupping, but for now, just wanted to show you some of the great points that you can use with gua sha to kick out wind cold. So if you feel a little sniffly, that's really, really great that you can use this. The other thing too, with the other point we used um, here is great for little kids. When they start to get the sniffles, when they're like sneezing, start to get the sniffles, or even if they start running like a little mild temperature, start gua sha this area. If you don't have any tool, okay, on you, you can use a jar lid. Now, sometimes the jar lid, not on the plastic ones, the steel ones, the metal ones, there's the edge of the jar lid is rolled, so it is smooth. So you can do that back and forth. Okay, now say you have no jars. No jars, no oil. You're in the middle of nowhere. You have nothing on you, and your kid starts to feel sick. Okay, what you can do is literally, even on top of their clothing, is take your hand like this and just rub. Either side is fine. Vigorously, just rub it until there's heat coming out, right? And sometimes they'll let you like sneak up their shirt, right? So you can just, or go into the bathroom wherever you are and just heat up those points, activate these points. I did this one time for a figure skater. Yeah, that she was. I was in LA, so she was actually a figure skater in a very, very famous movie, and we were doing a photo shoot together. And it was like 4 a.m. in the morning. I still haven't had my photo shoot yet. She was about to have hers, and she felt like death warmed over. She had a fever. She felt awful. But it was a gig, money coming in. So I didn't have anything on me. I didn't have patches at that time. I didn't have gua sha tools. I didn't have anything because I'm there for a photo shoot. You know what I mean? So we took her to the back room, so we were private. And I said, "Do you mind if I activate your acupuncture points in the back? It might make you feel better." She says, "Sure, I'll do anything. I feel horrible." So she unzipped the top of her skating outfit, and I just went in the back and just rubbed my knuckles, the flat part of my knuckles, right over those points till I got heat. She's like, "Oh, wow, that feels really good," And I did that for maybe 5 minutes, or at least till I got tired. And she did her skate. Everything went fine. She texted me the next day and she says, "Oh my God, I felt so much better the next day. Like it was gone. Whatever I was going through was gone." Now she was an elite athlete, and I was surprised since it had been quite a while. I didn't know if it was going to kick it out because you want to do it as soon as you have symptoms. But in her case, it really worked. And she felt great. She was very grateful. So these points are really good to know, especially through cold and flu season. These are the points that we would do acupuncture on, for example. But now you can do gua sha and or patching for any of these symptoms that come up. And as far as is it painful? Well, oftentimes, if there is no stagnant energy in that area, no matter how hard you rub, it doesn't hurt. If there's stagnant energy in the area, it'll start to feel like a little bit like a burn, as if there's not enough oil there. But then you check and you're like, oh, there is oil there. So that burning is the release, I think, the release of the fascia that got stuck from the inflammation, or for the invasion of, cold, heat, whatever, in Chinese medicine. So you wash out to the point where it's tolerable, right? Now, I have a very high pain tolerance. So, if my husband's doing it, he'll check in with me and I'm like, nope, keep going, right? And I'll just breathe through it. Other times, some people don't have as much pain tolerance. So we just go a little bit more easy on them. Sometimes there's no pain at all and the shock comes out right away and there's hardly any pain. So you may catch it kind of early in that stage. So just, use your discernment as far as how hard to do it, especially if you're doing it for another person. But for yourself, it's easy, right? You just, you take your oil and you just go whatever you can stand. And if you see a lot of red coming up, then you can just focus on that point and just keep rubbing over that point until there's no more red coming out. And then you can move on to the next area. And so it's a great practice for pain, for moving blood, energy. It can be a anti-aging type of thing, especially if you're looking to increase circulation in the face. I use the face blaster, but of course you can always use Gua Sha tool on the face as well. I find that the rolled edge doesn't really do as much for me, but I'm kind of hardcore, so you can try different things. These tools are generally fairly inexpensive. I put some examples of those tools. Now, I don't have all of them because I use Chinese spoon most of the time, but um, you can look in the description near this video for a couple of things you can get on Amazon, including the exact one that I use for me on my neck. And also, I put in a link for a book on, if you are the type of person that wants more information, you can go ahead and get that book on like, how would I do my knee, or how would I do my, back, or how would I do my arm, right? It's pretty simple, guys. It's just back and forth. And if you're going over bones, you just go more gently. If you feel, or if you see redness coming in around the bones, stick around that area and back and forth just to release the fascia from the bones. It can be incredibly relaxing and feel really, really cool. And just remember that deep purple means it's been stagnated for a while. So you'll probably want to redo your gua sha, 10 days, 2 weeks, afterwards. And as you do it, you'll find that it gets better and better and better unless there's something new going on that you need to address. And if you do it and it's bright red, that's awesome. That's something that means that your blood circulation is much better. And for those of you, if you have not tried the LifeWave phototherapy patches and would like to do so, I'll put a link in the description. Please work with the distributor or brand partner that has sent you to this video, in case they have sent you this video for you to learn. Work with them to get the patches. If you're brand new, don't know what patches are, have never heard of them, need some help, you certainly can connect with me. I'll put my link as well in the description. Or if you're on Facebook and you're part of a group, I have a group for all team members and customers called the LW Phototherapy Patch Training Team Support Group. And so if you're there, then you can work with my colleague and team member, Anna Kadina, who is very generous with her time to help people in that group. So I hope this has been helpful for you. I would love to hear some feedback and some comments. You can go ahead and whenever you watch this video, go ahead and put it in the comments. Are you going to try Gua Sha? If you have you already done it? Is there a favorite tool that you like to use? And what was your experience with it? Like any of those questions, answers, put that in the comments. And if you are seeing this on YouTube, go ahead and click the subscribe button if you'd like to subscribe to my channel, and then the notification bell, so anytime we have a new video, you will be notified. Thank you so much, and feel free to share this video with whoever you think has little kids may benefit from it. All right, until next time, lots of love. Bye, guys.